By far, the most common comment on my tiny camera series is, why don't you just use your smartphone? We have an everyday carry, it's called your phone, etc. So let's address that. In this video, I'm going to talk about why I think there are huge benefits to having a smaller camera versus just your phone. However, for balance, I'm also going to discuss why I think phones are pretty amazing too. I don't hate phones or anything, I'm not a tiny camera evangelist, despite appearances. There's pros and cons to both, as ever. So let's get stuck in. First of all, this isn't really about image quality. The definition of image quality. Image quality refers to the overall clarity, sharpness, and visual fidelity of an image. Of course, you can get great photographs with a phone and with a camera. It's more nuanced than that, and let me explain. The phone versus camera debate is not about image quality, it's about characteristics within an image. Things like how a lens choice can change an image, or an aperture setting, or a sensor size. These things are characteristics of an image and not about overall image quality. And also another element that I think is important is the tactile, physical experience of a phone versus a camera. Team camera. If bigger is better. I know this is quite ironic coming from a channel called Micro for Nerds, but the sensor discussion is a key factor to this debate. Now, I'm relatively sensor agnostic. I'll shoot anything, and I think it's the overall final product that matters more than anything. But in my experience, I think there is a crossover between the people who say just use your smartphone and people who love full frame and think smaller censored things are a bit pants. So, a little thought experiment. A full frame sensor is 3.8 times larger than a Micro Four Thirds sensor. However, a Micro Four Thirds sensor is 3.1 times larger than the new sensor in the newest iPhone. If we can agree that the larger sensor on a full frame camera adds different benefits like shallower depth of field and maybe better low light performance versus Micro Four Thirds, surely we can extrapolate and say that getting a Micro Four Thirds size sensor will offer you different benefits versus just your phone. And if you're shooting APS-C as your everyday carry, then that's different again and even more benefits. There is almost as much difference between a full frame sensor and a Micro Four Thirds sensor as there is a Micro Four Thirds sensor and your phone. You can't have it both ways. Either size matters or it doesn't. Now again, we're not talking about image quality, we're talking about differences in characteristics. If you are someone who values having a shallower depth of field and a different look with different lenses, then a camera will be better for you than a relatively narrow depth of field. Every shot is very similar in your phone. Team phone. This is my evil persona, by the way. It's convenient. Surely that's what it really boils down to. Having something in your pocket that you already own and you don't have to take a phone and a camera is a huge benefit. If you like the idea of having an everything device that's your phone, your camera, your calculator, your contactless for payment, etc., then the phone is really hard to beat. There's even a flash built into your phone, there are multiple lenses in your phone, and you never have to remember to pack your SD cards. And cherry on top, it's already connected to all of your social devices so you can share things immediately with family and friends and anybody online. And I admit, there have been times, time-sensitive times, where if I've got a camera in my bag but a phone in my back pocket, it's just quicker to take a quick snap with my phone rather than get my camera out of my bag. Height of irony, I know, but it has happened. Also, phones can get places that cameras can't. There's so many places in the UK now that won't let you bring a camera, even a tiny camera, into a music venue. You have to stick it in the cloakroom. But everybody and their dog has a phone with them. And sometimes you just gotta make do with what you've got. Team camera, lens choice and versatility. If you're talking about an interchangeable lens camera, like for example a Micro Four Thirds camera, the lenses that you can attach to this camera and the creative choices you have are pretty much endless. You can adapt vintage lenses, you could put a fisheye lens on, you could put a macro lens on, you could use different prime lenses. There's all kinds of different characteristics that you can add into your photographs that could completely change just using the same device. Now your phone does have a couple of lenses on it usually. You might have a telephoto, you might have a wide angle lens. They're not the best quality in the world, you're still working with a smaller sensor, and I do maintain that you will get better results on a physical camera. For example, you might have a 10 times zoom on your phone or a 10 times equivalent zoom on a lens. And if you were in Costa Rica taking pictures of a toucan, would you rather have it on your phone or would you rather have it with a dedicated camera? Being physically able to change your lenses can teach you so much about photography. And learning your focal lengths is something that is so handy as well. If you go around for a month and only shoot 40mm, for example, you will start seeing compositions in your mind and know how things look before you press the shutter. On a phone, the standard lens is pretty wide, and then the zoom tends to be variable, so you can't often replicate this as well on a phone versus an actual camera. And yes, depth of field. There's no way you can replicate a shallower depth of field on the phone versus a camera without using like digital fake blur, because it's just science. Small sensor, less blur. Team phone. Affordability. Now, I'm not saying phones are cheap, phones are blooming expensive, but it's more socially acceptable that everyone tends to have a semi-decent phone. It's easier for you to pay them monthly or do what I do, and that's just buy one outright every 2 to 3 years and hope I don't drop it. I think people budget in that they're going to need a phone because you need a phone for 100 different other things. But asking someone to spend a couple of £100 on a dedicated camera that only does one thing, and that's take photographs, is more of a bigger ask. Everyone has a phone, a camera is a luxury. Team camera. Ergonomics and experience. Taking photos with your phone for a full day is like walking up a mountain in flip-flops. You'll get to the top, but it'll be a much more painful and laborious experience than if you just pack your hiking boots. Carrying a camera is much more comfortable and intuitive versus awkwardly holding a phone all day if you're out on a photo walk. And there's just something so satisfying about bringing a camera to your eye and hearing the clack, the physical moment that a photo is taken. Hopefully when you do it, you'll actually have a lens on. And using a viewfinder instead of squinting at the back of your phone when the lighting is harsh. Having tactile dials and full manual controls versus rooting around in a menu virtually. Being able to go on a 3-hour photo walk without worrying about your primary device dying battery-wise. You know, this is your payment card, this is your map, this is probably your music as you're walking around. Relying on one device for this is just like, it adds an extra layer of stress. And holding a phone is quite uncomfortable in the hand versus holding a camera. You can get different accessories to enhance the phone experience, but at which point, if you're rigging out your phone, you're probably going to be spending a couple £100 anyway, and these are only £200. So why not get a better camera with a bigger sensor, tactile buttons, rather than making a compromised experience with your phone? Even having an articulating screen so that if you're in a tricky spot, you can get the angle that you want. You can't do that on a phone. And I think all these little things add up, all these little experiences that enhance your photography experience and that makes you enjoy it get stripped away when you are just using a phone. And one thing that I think is often overlooked is if you are learning photography, this will give you access to manual controls and you can have different settings on your dials. And if you ever want to upgrade to a larger camera, you have the muscle memory then, you know how the camera works. You just can't replicate this when you're rooting around in a menu on your phone. And 90% of the time with your phone, you're shooting in auto settings anyway, so you're not really learning the fundamentals. But isn't that a pro, Emily, rather than a con? Team phone, ease of use. If you want to just have something that is completely beginner friendly and just take photographs without worrying about settings, the phone is the best way to do it. These are very intelligent devices nowadays, and the auto settings outperform pretty much any auto settings inside a camera. And another thing that your phone can do is if you're walking past an amazing space, but it's midday sun and it looks terrible, you can think about locations and bank compositions as a mental note for you to come back to that place at sunset or sunrise, because, you know, the time of day will make such a big difference, and you can start thinking in advance what you would do in that space with your phone and then come back later with a camera, or just with your phone again, because there's no right or wrong answers, and phones can take very nice photographs. I've been rocking the Ray-Ban Metas in this video. Bloomin' love them. The AI features are only available in certain countries and not in the UK. Enter NordVPN, the kind sponsor of today's video. 2 seconds later, when I connected to NordVPN on my phone, these updated and now I can get them to do silly things. What do you think of NordVPN?
NordVPN is a popular virtual private network service known for its security features and fast connection speeds.
Thanks, babe. Getting NordVPN can add a heck of a lot to your life. They have automatic threat protection built in, which will keep you safe online. But the thing that I love about this is it stops third-party trackers from seeing what you're doing online. Have you ever done that thing where, like, you'll say Scrabble in a conversation and then you targeted ads for the next month of board games? These are also third-party trackers. NordVPN will stop that in its tracks as well, that was a good pun, as well as all the other benefits. So check out the link in the description and you can get an exclusive NordVPN deal where you can get a discounted 2-year plan and 4 months for free. Team camera, I will die on this hill. Even if your phone can shoot RAW, you get way more dynamic range even in an older Micro Four Thirds RAW file. You can push and pull these files way more than you think. And if you were thinking about APS-C sensors, like the Fujifilm X100, the dynamic range, the way that you can pull back from the shadows is absolutely incredible. You'll never get that on a phone because you just don't have the dynamic range and the sensor isn't big enough to record all of this information. So even if you can shoot RAW, it's still what I would consider a crippled version of RAW versus what you could find even in a cheap camera. And what if you shoot JPEG? Well, I think newer phones are better at this and you can mitigate it by changing your settings, but sometimes there is just an inherently over-sharpened look to phone photos. They're designed to be beginner friendly, and imagining that people will take the shot and put it on social media, you want it to be nice and sharp and crisp. But if you're coming at it from a photography standpoint, you maybe don't want that over sharpened look. And you have to get relatively good at editing phone photos to take away the phone look from them. Why not just start in a place of success and take photographs with a camera and you don't have that issue to begin with? Also, team camera, distraction-free photography. Now, I don't know about you, but when I take photographs, I want to enjoy the experience. It's something that I love, and I don't want to be looking at my phone and having notifications pop up every couple of minutes. I don't want that distracting element. These things are dumb. They're not connected to anything. You can go out and just enjoy your experience and concentrate on your photography. With a phone, of course, you could put it in Do Not Disturb mode or airplane mode, but I just find the temptation is still there. I much prefer a distraction-free photo walk using a traditional camera over a phone. Team phone. Computational features. Now, there are some brands like OM Systems / Olympus who do computational features very, very well in cameras, but I don't think any camera brand will ever catch up or exceed what a phone can do. With a phone, you have computational features like you can do handheld long exposures to make sure that the low light performance is brilliant. You have HDR. You can even go in and erase objects in the background without having any in-depth Photoshop knowledge. The computational features are both impressive and very user-friendly on a phone. In a camera, you do get some things like live composite mode or live ND, for example, and these features are hugely beneficial in their place, but I do think day-to-day computational features, the phone is always going to be more innovative and more user-friendly. But you could argue that needing computational features to get good low-light images is also a con, because you could just get better low-light images using a camera and not have to rely on the software processing the image. Sorry, I defected at the end there. Team camera. If you are out and about in a city, it's just safer and more discreet to have a camera instead of a phone. If you're walking around for hours on end with your phone dangling out of your hand, you are a target for thieves. And it's rife, particularly in places like London and stuff. It's very, very common at the moment for people to have the phone swiped with people going past on like scooters and stuff. And with a camera, one, I actually think if you get a cheap old looking one, you're much less of a target anyway. And two, it's much easier to have a little wrist strap on, which will be a deterrent as well. And if you are thinking about travel or street photography, I think if you're taking a photograph of a stranger in public, you know, maybe they're just in the scene and someone clocks you doing it, people understand that you're a photographer if you have a camera. If you're waving a smartphone in their face, that becomes a different thing entirely. They may get more angry if they see you doing that. They may think you're taking a picture to, you know, put on social media or whatever. I think there is a language and an understanding around what people do with a camera versus a phone, and one is certainly less intrusive than the other. Team both? If you take good photographs with your phone, you'll be able to take good photographs with a camera. If you take bad photographs with your phone, spending a boatload of money on a dedicated camera won't be a magic bullet and fix things for you. It may make you more inspired to go out and use your camera more, which would in turn make you a better photographer, but the technology themselves has nothing to do with the images that output. If you've seen the newer iPhone reviews lately, you can see that there are excellent photographs coming out of that phone. But do you know what is on the other end of that? An excellent blooming photographer. The phone doesn't come out of the box and be like, oh my God, I can take all these Americana sunny images all of a sudden that look like Fujifilm photos. To the bloody hell. It's because an excellent photographer has taken an excellent image and knows how to edit. And you can do that on either device. And as I said right at the start, this debate does not really come down to image quality at all. It comes down to which you prefer. If you like an everything device and you just want to go out and not think about photography too much and just do it as and when the situation arises, perhaps a phone is a great tool for you. Perhaps that's all you will ever want or need to share photographs on social media, etc. People make a good living with nothing but their phone. Or perhaps you value a tactile experience and perhaps you want to get to grips with your manual settings a little bit more and experiment with different lenses, in which case a camera would be a great option. And as I discuss on this channel all the time, it needn't be a massive, expensive purchase. You can get a lot of camera and a lot of lenses for just a couple of £100 if you want to. But you don't have to. Nobody should gatekeep photography, and me least of all. So if you enjoy taking photographs with your phone, excellent. If you enjoy camera, excellent. Hopefully this video has shown you the pros and cons to both options. For me, and obviously I'm going to say this, I'm a camera nerd, I feel a little bit more authentic when I take photographs with a physical camera. I love the tactile experience, the sound of the shutter, composing and being a little bit more thoughtful. That doesn't mean that I'm right and anybody else is wrong. It's just something that works for me personally, and your mileage may vary. The photos matter at the end of the day, regardless of the devices that we use to get there. If you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you'll love this video, which is 15 years of photography advice in 15 minutes.